Okay. Hello, everyone. This is the second AsyncAPI SIG meeting, Special Interest Group meeting. Today, I would like to start giving the welcome as maintainers to the project to Raisel and Mike. So thanks, Raisel and Mike, to join as maintainers. You're the first to join. I'm not alone, finally. So yeah, I would like to go today through just a status update and new proposal for the tooling. Actually, it's just let me share my screen. So share. Okay. I think it's this one. Yeah. Can you also see my screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Cool. So for the status update, I'm just gonna use the blog post, which I think summarizes it well. So I'd like to mention, for those of you who are not yet aware, we did some changes to the specification that are not yet launched. They are merged, but they're not yet launched. They will be part of version 2. One of them is normalizing topics URIs as path templates. These topics from now on will look like this, more or less like a URL. Also, we renamed it. We renamed topics to channels. So I should start ideally calling them channels and not topics anymore. And we removed events, the events section, in favor of the root channel. So instead of having events and topics you could have channels and slash, and the slash channel will act as a global one, like the one for events. So events is not needed anymore. Eventually, we will get rid of the stream one as well. Whenever we have the Protocolmappers, which we'll talk about it later. As I said, some organizational changes. So Mike and Raisel joined us as maintainers. We now run this meeting every 2 weeks. Before it was every week, and it was we found out that it was too much. Basically, we didn't have enough news to share. And yeah, I don't know if you saw it, but we did some major changes to the README, and now you can find lots of information. Go and check it out whenever you have time. And this week, myself, at least, I'm working on adding support for multiple schemas. And when I mean schemas, because this is schemas is a prostituted term right now. We're using it for many different meanings. So schemas as in a way to define the content of a message. Right now, we were using JSON schema flavor, let's say, which is inherited from OpenAPI, and we will start supporting different ones like JSON schema draft 4 to 7, proto buffers, Avro, you name it. The spec will leave it open, and it will be responsibility of the tooling to parse these formats to be able to actually validate messages and so on. So my ideally this week, I will start working on the improving connectivity milestone. Improving connectivity is a name. It's a very fancy name that I created for this milestone, for grouping a lot of tasks that were related to servers and to the servers section of the spec. and the schemes and security requirements, server variables, all of that. So that shouldn't be that shouldn't take too long, because even though there are like 6 tasks, they're all very small. Like some of them are just 5-minute changes, so it shouldn't take too long. And that's my plan. My plan is to finish all of them by this week. And also, I would like to tell you that right now we have an open collective. I don't know if you notice it, but let me go through the repo first. So if you go to the README, you will see that there are a donate link here. You see this stuff, right? This yeah, because I was not sure if it was sharing the other tab yet. So we have a donate link here, and we also have one here, which is become a sponsor, and they all take you to Open Collective. They both. So Open Collective is a platform for let's say crowdfunding for open source projects, or for open initiatives, if you want, for public and transparent initiatives. Okay, so we are hosted by a non-profit foundation, the Open Source Collective 501c6. This is a type of foundation. That means it's non-profit. So donations can, so people can actually get taxes back or something like that. I don't remember, to be honest. This is something that that's finances from the US. I don't know if you, Raisel or Emmelyn, know better, but when you donate to a nonprofit, you can ask for the taxes back, I think. So yeah, you see here we have a description of the project here, and different the description on the left, and on the right you have different tiers. Like let me go back, and you have backers, you have bronze sponsors, silver sponsors, gold, and base support sponsors. So they all share one thing. Backers are basically from individuals. If you don't have so much money but still want to contribute, this is like $5 per month. It's a beer per month, maybe. So it's not so much, but we appreciate. And then you have bronze, silver, and gold sponsors, which all of them are will get you a logo in our repo. Bronze sponsor will get a logo on the backers markdown file. There's no backers markdown file yet because we don't have any bronze sponsors, but we will create one as soon as we have one. And then silver sponsors and gold sponsors will get their logo on the README and on the website as well, on both places. And then we have the base support sponsors, this is like, okay, you're totally in the project, right? Like you want to support this project, and we will offer you some, obviously the logo in the README and in the website, but we will offer support and workshops and things like that. What else? Let me continue here. Well, I think that's it, mostly for the status update. Well, let me share something with you. There is a pull request going on. This is the issue, not the pull request, but here it's better explained. So this is exactly what I was saying, that we're going to support multiple schema formats. So this is an example. Let me make it a little bigger. this is an example of a message payload that it's defined using protobuf. Here, it's defined putting some hard code protobuf there, which is not nice because it's a string. But you can always refer to your protobuf file, and you can keep it where it is, right? So you don't have to write it here in the document. This is just an example using protobuf because it's very different to JSON schema, but you could replace this with Avro and with any other format that you wish to use. Does it make sense to you all?
Yeah, I have a question. So we were talking about the comment that I sent you about not supporting multiples
yeah, it's here.
formats at a time, right?
Yeah. It's here.
Yeah. So in that case, isn't it defining in the body the format redundant? If we are going to have only one format, right? In the header, we specify, okay, this is JSON schema or protobuf or whatever, and then in the body, we also need to define the same format, the same content type, right? Maybe it's redundant in that case.
Because you may not have it on the same format. So think about, for instance, you may have things defined in protobuf, like the payload might be defined in protobuf, but you don't have headers defined in protobuf, right? So you might want to use JSON schema here, right? So you probably, what you're suggesting is that we could move this app one level up, the application X protobuf one level up, and that will be the same for both, for headers and for payload, right?
Yeah. Oh, okay. So that means that here we can define different format for the header and okay.
Exactly. That's my point. Because what I found is that many companies don't use or don't define their headers, but they do define their payloads, and they might have it as a proto buffer. And if they want to have it like really quickly without having to bother creating another file for their headers, they could do it here using JSON schema instead of proto buffers. So we should allow some flexibility, like some part of the document might use JSON schema and some others will use payload. Right? Proto buffer.
You know, I feel it's weird to have, what about having an additional header to define the content type of the body? I don't know, it feels weird to me to define the...
It's not an additional header. It's so headers will start here. You know what I mean? I mean, if you have a better idea, I can show you what I've been working. Here, I discarded this solution precisely for that. Like I have this solution where I was putting schema type here, and then you have headers and payload. But that was enforcing people to have headers and payload in the same format. And they might not want or they might not have it, which
okay.
is, you know.
I take a look again at the.
Yeah.
I think you updated after I first read it, and then you probably updated. I don't know. But
yeah, I just added this. I just added this line. I just updated this. The following is not valid.
Okay.
This is the only thing I updated. And these discarded solutions, I have another one here, which is schema type and URIs instead of using refs. Yeah. Then I found out, because in the beginning I thought if it was referencing something that it's not JSON, it might cause some problems to some resolvers when it fetches the proto file and it's not JSON, right? But then I realized, okay, if we put here the payload can be anything, can actually be anything, any type, this will not be a problem because it will be resolved as a string, right? So it will be resolved like in here. Let me check. So the result will be like putting the string here directly. So it's not a problem. We can use refs. I actually did the test on a JSON schema validator.
Yeah, I just had one question about the use of application X protobuf. I know it's just an example here, but I had a quick look at the RFC that defines application protobuf, which is an expired RFC, and it doesn't go into any detail about how to resolve a fragment ID. And fragment ID resolution is supposed to be defined by the media type. So do we need to explain that we have special rules for sort of looking inside a protobuf file?
Yeah, what I used here was exactly the fragment, the URI fragment, to actually point to the message identifier. So imagine that we have a protobuf file like this one, containing this only this message. We will want to go to this file and point to user created message.
Yeah, that probably makes a lot of sense, but it's, I think, technically non-standard. So
it is not actually.
Okay. Yeah.
Actually, X protobuf is not even standard. Like this is, as you said, this is expired. They have application protobuf expired, if I'm not mistaken. And
I think there's a Vend Google something protocol buffers as well. But
yeah, I mean, in any case, we can change this easily, or we can even support many here, right? Like the piece of software in charge of resolving this can support application protobuf, application X protobuf, application or Google something, right? We don't have to stick to one. We just need to be clear on which ones are the supported, right? But yeah, I agree that, I mean, this was kind of an invention of mine. Like if you go, it makes sense to me, like a fragment is actually for that. So the definition of a fragment is exactly that. I want just a specific part of the fetched document. But yeah.
I'm not very familiar with protobuf files. Would messages be the only things, the top level things that are defined in the protobuf file?
I think so. Let me.
Yeah, I haven't seen that. I have the same question, because in that case, then that means that the tools will need to understand the whole file and only extract that part of the file.
No, I mean, you get the whole file, obviously, but you want to point to a single part of the file. Like when you fetch a JSON schema, you get the whole JSON file, right? But you just want one part. So I don't know. Let me. Is it? This is code example, correct? So what I see in the tutorials, for instance, I've seen it somewhere. So this is what I've seen. I can probably look for more examples, but most of the files that I've seen on the past, they're all like this. Just a sequence of messages. Messages can be nested. That's something to take into account. Like you can have a message inside another message.
So we might need to decide what separator to use in the fragment ID.
Or not, or you don't allow to go to go to nested messages, because what I've seen is that, for instance, if, examples that I've seen for nesting is that if you want to have imagine that you have a special type here, like user, and continuing inside the search request, continuing inside, you define what user means. But you will not want to target this user object, right? You will want the top level, right? The other thing that people do is that they don't put it on inside. They put it aside, like here, and it works. It still works. You don't have to nest definitions. So yeah, but this is something that we will for sure keep learning. Look, for instance, you have corpus here, right? I'm not sure if you can probably have enums on top level, maybe. In any case, I think we should target always messages, right? That's what I think. So that's protobuf specific. We can then we can go through the specific of this one while we are defining how it should work. This one specifically, but yeah, another thing is the way it should be resolved might change for every schema format, because different schema formats might have different needs. Like I don't have a use case right now, but for instance, I'm thinking about binary formats. If you want to specify something here that's a binary file, you may need some sort of way to indicate that your you need to refer to some part of your binary file. Like imagine I want to just grab from byte 3 to byte 10, something like that, right? I don't know. I'm just inventing the use case, so don't take it so much into account. But probably the way it works, it should be defined on the protocol mapper, on the schema format parser. And now continuing to that, because I'm using too many new words. So this is the document for the tooling roadmap, the strategy, and also the technical proposal on how to implement it. So one thing before we go there is this terminology that I was using, this new terminology. I want to make it clear that the way I see this implementation is by separating things in, at least that I have think of, is four parts. So we have the high level specification parser validator. This is like the one in charge of parsing, and probably I'm using validator here while I should not, but let's just stick to parser. This is the one in charge of parsing the whole document, the whole structure, and checking if it's actually an AsyncAPI document, like verifying that the first field is AsyncAPI with version 2, blah, blah, blah. It has channels, it has servers, they all have the structure, the correct structure, right? But it doesn't go, it does not go into details, as it says here, on how to parse. So here, parse schemas, and that's very important. We just want to have a piece of software that will check for this structure. This is just a JSON schema parser. It's nothing else. It's just what we have right now, but ignoring the part of where we define the message. That's it. And then once this is well, let's forget about that. Then we have another piece, which is the schema parser, and this is the one, or these are the ones that will be in charge of parsing every type of schema. If we have a JSON schema, a JSON schema definition for a message, we will use the JSON schema parser for this message. If it's a protobuf, we will use the protobuf for this message definition. and so on, right? And we will have to support OpenAPI schema as well. I don't know, Mike, how do you feel about this? Like calling it OpenAPI schema, but you know, these are the schemas inside OpenAPI specification.
I think we should specify whether it's version 3.
Yeah. All of them. I mean, all of them be versioned. Like for instance, Protobuf. I think it has a mainly version 2 and 3. So yeah. And then, this part is specifically, the Protocolmapper is specifically for SDKs, if you want. So this one is in charge of telling the SDK how it should encode and decode, or how it should serialize or deserialize the message. So for instance, if we want to send the message over MQTT, we would like to have these headers, like quality of service header, and they can just be 1 or 2. For those who don't know, MQTT quality of service can also be 0. But imagine, for us, for our specific use case, we want just to have 1 or 2. We don't allow 0. Okay, and any other protocol-specific configuration. So the SDK will read this part of the file and will validate the message, or will construct the message depending on what's defined here. So imagine that we are trying to send a message via MQTT with quality of service 0. It will fail because we know that it can only be 1 or 2, right? So that's one part. That's this part. If you notice, this is a specification extension. That's why it starts with X dash. I'm doing it as specification extensions because I think it's the easiest way now. We might think about standardizing these things in a different way in the future in the spec, but right now I think it's fine like that. And that's why I said this. They are like a special type of specification extension, right? Does it make sense so far? What are the parts?
Yeah.
Okay. So sorry, go on.
No, yeah, just saying, yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. And now specification extensions. So this is very important because I know it sounds sometimes like it's crazy. How are you going to parse specification extensions? No, we're not. We're gonna parse it, but we're not going to build the parsers, right? So what we're gonna do is, for instance, so Mike shared with me an example of an OpenAPI specification extension, which is X Twitter. And in the info object. Imagine that along with name, description of that, we want to have the Twitter contact. That's cool. But it needs to be validated, right? Like you cannot put here whatever you want. Imagine that we have X Twitter and 5. We put a 5, the number 5 there. It doesn't make sense, right? So we need to have a piece of software that will validate that. We ourselves, we're not going to write how to validate that, but people will want to validate that these parts, or may not. But if they want, they should be able to do it, right? I'm putting a more complex example here, but let's forget about it. So what I'm advocating for here is that at some point we will have a directory of extensions where people can go and find, and they have to define where they're gonna, it's actually allowed to have the extension. Like here, for instance, the only place you can have this extension is in the info object. And also they should provide a JSON schema document saying, hey, this piece of JSON schema is actually validating what's in here. So you cannot put whatever you want there. We will use this piece of JSON schema in our parser at the end of the whole cycle to validate that the specification extension is there. We will use it if the user provides us this piece of JSON schema. If not, it's totally fine. By default, extensions will not fail. We don't care. These are free, right? You can do whatever you want. So and this is the graphic, the chart for the parser. So here is where you see all the 4 types of components playing together. Sorry, not the 4, just 3, because here we don't use Protocolmappers. Protocolmappers are not used on the parser. So again, this first one is the one in charge of parsing the YAML or JSON, the input YAML or JSON. The second one is a schema parser, or if you want, this piece here will just make one of the other parsers below, like JSON schema, Protobuf, or Abro, to take care of the message parsing, of the schema parsing. Then we will have the specification extensions parser, and then once we have the whole document validated and built, we will validate it with a JSON schema validator, right? So we provide a valid JSON schema document. And this JSON schema document will be what we actually will provide to the rest of the tooling. And the rest of the tooling will not have to worry about Protobuf, Abro, or anything. They will just use JSON schema. So all this JSON schema, Protobuf, Abro, they will need to convert to JSON schema, to a specific version of JSON schema, right? So we unify everything there. It's not hard. I've been looking into that, and Protobuf already have a way to convert, libraries to convert to JSON schema. Avro the same. It's been a little bit harder to find it for Go, but they are there, and they're not complex. If we have to write it in Go, it's going to be fine. What else?
One question from.
Yeah.
Why do we need to convert everything to JSON schema?
Because if we don't do it, this is the parser. So imagine that we have a code generator. The code generator will have to read the whole document, right? The whole AsyncAPI document, and from there it will have to generate some code, right? As simple as that. If we don't convert to JSON schema, all the code generators, all the other tooling as well, the documentation generators will need to understand Protobuf, will need to understand Avro, will need to understand JSON schema, the OpenAPI schemas. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The parser will have to understand it. The code generator will have to understand it. The documentation generator will have to understand it. Everyone. So.
Yeah. We need a common format. Yeah.
But all of them have in common that they need the parser first. They need to use the parser first. So let's get rid of this dependency on the parser, right? Like code generator, documentation generator, SDKs, everything will have to use the parser first. Which is obvious. It's like, okay, give me the document and I will read it, right? Then let's get rid of these difficulties for the rest of the people on the parser, right? And then we provide a fully valid JSON schema document. And if we have to annotate with our own extensions the JSON schema document, let's go for it. I mean, it's fine. If we imagine that there are some things in Protobuf or in Avro that we cannot do with JSON schema, that can happen. If that's the case, we can we can create our own extensions on the output document that we will have here in the output of the parser, indicating that this contains some special thing from Protobuf, right? But in that case, what happens is that this is like a funnel, right? Every piece of software will have to go through the parser, and then it will go through their own business logic. And it's not because we want. I mean, if you think about it, the code generator that we have, the node code gen, not the generator package. Node code gen has a parser built in, kind of a parser. The documentation generator also has same thing. I mean, it's actually repeated. It's copy pasted. The parser is copy pasted, so it's there. It's a built-in parser, and that's why I created the generator package. Like, this is insane. I have the parser in both places, and those two packages are doing the same. One for generating code, and the other one for generating documentation. But in the end, what they're generating are files. Independently what's inside the file, if it's code or if it's HTML or Markdown, it's the same, right? That's why I unified both. But then I realized, crap, there's something here that still doesn't belong to the package itself, which is the parser. Because the parser, I will not like to deal with things like, if you have a base channel and a channel, you will have to join both, right? To get the whole channel or topic, okay? These little things were making me repeat code across all the tooling. Like this, for instance, this one, just this one, like having to make a to join the base topic and the topic, right? And if you have to do things like validating certain things like authentication or authorization methods, same thing. It's like you don't want to go through this, right? This is a tool for generating documentation, not for parsing, right? So yeah, that's why I would like to extract the parser, and not just for documentation generators and for code generators, but for every tool, because it has to be for every tool. We have to make it compatible with everything, right? And we have the opportunity to simplify the lives of the developers on the tooling side, right? It doesn't mean that if you are in the mood of creating your own parser, go for it, right? We may offer as well a way to hook into the parser. That will be also amazing, but that's a version 2, right? Or 3, or 4, even 4. Like once we have the parser, we may have the ability, or may offer the ability to hook, and whenever the parser is going to validate, I don't know, security schemes or something like that, then it's like, no, this is my responsibility. I will take care of it. Things like that. That's fine. That's fine. Or it's possible. So the idea, that's why I want to put a lot of effort in the parser, because I realize this is common to all the tooling, obviously, because all the tooling will have to parse the document and to understand what's inside, right? Does it make sense? Cool. So yeah, I'm not going to go through all these examples. So let me go to the roadmap directly. So so yeah, putting a little bit more emphasis here. We need to create a parser for AsyncAPI. That's why I put all the requirements here. Like, this must have all of this. Otherwise, we cannot consider it like done. It's basically what I just explained. We will want to go through creating a generating framework. So this is most probably I was going to say this is probably going to be like Swagger code gen or something like that Raisel has been looking into, but we don't know yet. So that's why I didn't want to write there that we're gonna use Swagger code gen or tweak Swagger code gen, but we may grab some approaches they did instead of code approaches. So yeah, probably that's why it's a question mark here. Probably by implementing improving the async API generator. Again, as always, a dependency is the parser. We need a parser. Once we have a good, decent, let's say, parser and code generator tool, and documentation generator tool as well, we may want to go through SDKs, but that's still a question mark because that will be cool, but some people might prefer to use their own solutions that they're used to. For instance, if you are used to, how is it called? Raisel, help me with that. I don't remember the name on Java. In this Spring Cloud.
Spring Cloud Streams.
Yeah, Spring Cloud Streams. If you're used to Spring Cloud Streams, whatever, right? And you love it, and you know how it works. You may want to build your code using Spring Cloud Streams and not our SDK, right? It makes total sense. But SDKs, building an SDK is actually for a different purpose. The purpose is to ease the how can I explain the onboarding of people into event-driven systems, because currently it's very hard for people to get into event-driven because of the multiple systems out there like MQTT, MQP, NATS, for instance, different languages, different frameworks, different ways of working, right? While HTTP is much simpler in this case because you have a lot of unified tooling and everything is like unified into HTTP protocol and it's fine. We want to use this transition as well, but that's like a long-term vision, like medium-term, long-term vision. And the cool idea will be to create an SDK that allows you to send and receive messages from a server or a broker, and you don't have to know if the broker is Kafka, if it's MQTT, NATS, MQB, whatever. So your code will remain the same, and you only have to go to a config file and say, hey, actually this broker here is a Kafka. You should get into partition number 2, whatever. I'm just inventing the details, right? And if at some point you decide to change Kafka for MQP or RabbitMQ, you just change the config file, but the code still works, right? That will be like, to me, that will be like amazing. Like, okay, so the code will be the same, right? Everything is abstracted in terms of code, not in terms of configuration. So yeah, and then the next logical step will be, okay, so let's create a code generator using our SDK. That's just in case we decide to build our SDKs. That's not sure. That's not for sure yet. This is kind of a jump here in this side because that's why I've been putting all the dependencies section here on everyone, on every milestone. So to make it explicit that this one, for instance, is not blocked by the previous one. They don't have to happen, all everyone after the other, right? So yeah, sorry, I have a call. Let me just reject it. Okay. Cool. So this is, yes, as you may know, this is a support for AsyncAPI React component, support for AsyncAPI 2 in the AsyncAPI React component, so we can render AsyncAPI version 2. Probably in an ideal world, it will. This is AsyncAPI. Oh yeah, I just split React and AsyncAPI generator templates for documentation. Yeah, most probably we'll have to work on both. So you can generate React, HTML, and Markdown, and they also should behave more or less the same, right, with their own peculiarities. And in an ideal world, as I was saying, we probably ditch the current editor in favor of the React playground that that Lucas and the Kima team has been developing, but it still needs some improvements. Like it needs to support, for instance, choosing between React, HTML, and Markdown, and some other things. We will go into details on that. So, what do you think about the roadmap?
It looks great.
Very comprehensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the multiple layered approach. So you've got building tools in Go, and then having wrappers for other languages.
Yeah.
Is one kind of layer, and then you've got the layered approach with multiple parts of the parser. I think it's really good. It should avoid the kind of duplication and fragmentation you get in tools around OpenAPI.
Yeah.
Because I think even if somebody re-implements the entire parser, they're probably going to implement it along the same lines of the roadmap.
Yeah.
So we're kind of guiding the way tools should be built, as well as building a reference implementation. Just a couple of quick questions. When we say JSON schema drafts 4 to 7, do we mean 4, 5, 6, and 7, or just 4, 6, and 7?
Yeah, I have to. Yeah, I realized the other day that 5 doesn't
really exist.
Support. Yeah, yeah. So probably no. 5. Forget about. I mean, actually, it's whatever it makes sense. It doesn't need to be. I was actually concerned about version 4 because version 4 is still very heavily used.
Yeah, absolutely.
On OpenAPI, on the OpenAPI ecosystem, many people use version 4, and for many people, version 7 seems like very new, very edge yet, right? And you might have to support version 6 too, right? But to be honest, I was at any time I was thinking on version 5 because from the little bit that I've seen, there's like no support for version 5. I don't know what happened. I don't know if you know, but
yeah, it's a slightly long story, but yeah, it's kind of, it was erased from existence. So
yeah.
My other quick question was, when you talk about beautifying the past version of a spec, are we going to standardize on what the beautified version should look like? So would all parsers beautify the spec in the same way?
At least, I mean, yes. So at least our parser should beautify in a specific way. And by beautifying, I was thinking a lot because it's always a mess about making join between base channel and the channel. This is always a mess. You always have to run into this. But we might also want to have, on the root level, we might also want to have a list of messages disposed in a different way. Like instead of channel and then publish and then the message, we might want to have just the list of all messages with some information about the topics in which this message is used, just to ease the development on the other side. Like for instance, you might want to have a list of topics, or sorry, of messages without topics or anything on your documentation. You just iterate for on this list, right? Instead of going on every topic, then on every operation and checking if it has a message on publish or in subscribe, you know. So, but answering your question is, I think we should at least offer a minimum standardization of what our parser offers.
Okay, just because I wasn't quite sure whether it included things like helpers for logicless templates.
Sorry, what? Say again.
In the current async API generator, you've got some helpers for the templates. Like, this is the last one of this array. This is the first one of this array.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure whether it included that level of beautification.
No. I was not thinking so much on the one that we have on generator right now. This is, I think this is too specific. Just a minimum thing, like like generating a collection of messages or a collection of topics or a collection of whatever things, so you don't have to traverse the whole tree every time, right? Just the basic stuff. And joining base topic and the topic, but we may want to define there, whenever we start working on that, we may want to define exactly how it should be beautified and defining what should be or what's required. Like if you create your own parser, it should follow at least this, like it should have at least these beautify things, right? At least.
Yeah,
and
we should define an interface that every parser should follow.
Exactly. So this resulting, this output schema will be our interface with the rest.
That would have a JSON schema for that document as well.
Yeah, exactly. We can have another JSON schema for that document. Correct. That's gonna be like so meta, right? JSON schema for a JSON schema for JSON schema. So yeah, and I mean, going briefly because it's super late. I extended so much. Sorry. This is a funny thing that I found on the internet, but I completely agree with this way of building products, and this is a product. So this is exactly what I want to achieve. That's why I want to put a lot of effort in building a nice parser and then starting building nice things, useful things, but slowly, but they also be useful, right? Even though we might not have the car really quickly, but in the meantime, we will offer bicycles, right? So at least there's something, and we keep building, you know, and iterating on that. Instead of the other approach, because what most probably will happen if we follow the first approach is that requirements might change during the way, and we find that this is we find that the requirements we had in the beginning are not what we thought, and we have to change things, and suddenly it's a mess. People abandon the project and the code, and things are not working well. And this is, and we can start working on that, and I don't know, and have a year of work without having anything really ready for anyone to use. That's not desirable. We want to have feedback as soon as possible, right? We want from step one, we want to start having feedback and saying, hey, guys, this parser is shit because this and this and this. Okay, perfect. You know, so at least we can solve the problems in the beginning. So yeah, this is basically I wanted to reinforce this way of this strategy and how to build it. Cool. There's something else you want to cover? I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. Okay, so Emmelyn is leaving us. Oh, say goodbye at least.
I hope you guys have a good day, and you should see me more active on GitHub now that I'm back home.
We have a new website, by the way. I forgot to mention.
It looks amazing. Oh my goodness.
Like, wow.
Yeah, it looks, yeah, because I had to, you know, uncache the browser to see the newest version. So
Yeah. Well, after you refresh your cache, this will never happen again. Previous website was using some sort of service worker magic to work offline, and that was terrible for cache invalidation. So yeah.
yeah,
Fine.
so I'm, you know, most interested in teaching people how to document event-driven APIs. And so a lot of what you guys are doing, I'll be observing until I become useful. So thanks for your patience.
I mean, no worries. You've been useful already. Don't feel bad. And one thing that I would like to spread the word, or for you to spread the word, is we need people to start creating content like blog posts and documentation, tutorials, and all of that. I'll be working on that, but I'm not a technical writer. So for you, the native English people, if you notice something's wrong with some language that I'm using or whatever, just let me know, because I mean, don't feel bad of telling me, hey, this is not correct. Please be always there, like, Fran, you made a mistake. No worries.
Yeah, for me, I might put it on the Slack directly to you instead of opening an issue. But if you prefer me to open an issue, it's totally up to you guys.
I mean, I'm fine to do it publicly. If you want to open an issue, do it, because it means that anyone else can take the opportunity to fix it, not just me.
Sounds awesome. Thanks,
otherwise,
everyone.
it will have to be me going through this, all the time, or me opening the issue afterwards. But I mean, don't feel bad. I'm not gonna feel offended for that. No worries. I know that my English is not perfect, obviously. So yeah. So this is something that we definitely need. We need to more people to create blog posts and on our blog and also in another blogs, and I'll be happy to join to other companies or other blogs to write a joint blog post. So, and as well as you, and feel free to write about it. Don't wait for me.
Will do. Thanks, everyone.
Cool, thanks. Okay. I have to jump into a call soon as well.
Me too. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cheers, everyone.
Cool. Bye. So, bye. Thanks, Enrico, for joining. See ya.
Yeah. See you next time. Bye.
Ciao.